It's not just railroads. If people think they're going to make a lot more railroads, the brand new steel industry will produce more steel. The coal industry will mine more coal or more iron mining, timber. It spreads to all parts of the economy. So overproduction in railroads means overproduction in steel, overproduction in all these different industries. And what happens if you produce more than what the market can bear? Eventually, what happens to the price? It begins to drop. And eventually, companies can't sustain that price drop. But you combine that with speculation. Remember speculation, buy low, sell high. The allure of trying to get rich without work. You know, somebody just buy that, whatever will go up in profit. Well, think about this bubble. People think, oh, you invest in railroads, we're going to get rich. And people start buying more and more stock in railroads. The price started going up greater and greater. But think about banks. How do banks make money? The traditional way. Interest. Yeah, they loan money with interest. Where do banks in this era get money to loan people? Where's that? Now, they could, maybe a tiny bit, but
people putting their money in the bank.
Savings accounts. Yeah? People have got to put money into savings accounts. So banks have got to convince people it's a safe place to put your money. It's safer than putting it under your mattress. You put it in the bank, we protect it, and you know, banks give a little bit of interest. So they'll pay people to save money. Now we have almost no interest, but yeah, it's a lot different than what it used to be. I can remember when in the late 70s when you would get 10% interest and put in money in a savings account. That would be nice. Of course, we had 18% inflation. That's a different world back then. But they get the money from savings and immediately lend that out. They don't hold it, and they operate under the assumption that their depositors aren't going to come all at once, waving little pieces of paper, their deposit slips. That's why they call debt. They call this paper. They call it the paper mark because you hold paper. You owe me this money that's on this paper. That's what they assume. And back then, there were virtually no regulations on banks. So banks could loan out more money than what they actually had. That actually happened in 2007, 2006. They just ignored it. They didn't enforce the regulation. But anyways, they start loaning money like that. But think about when stocks are going up or real estate. Banks are like, we're all getting rich. So what kind of people do they start making loans to? Anyone. Even people who might not have a way to pay it back. They figure, we're all going to get rich. I'll roll the die. And they make loans to everybody. And what happens is, when the bubble bursts and prices drop, remember, this has already happened. 1819, we talked about a little bit 1837. We just mentioned 1857. There are a couple others in there too. It's a phenomenon in capitalism. The bubble burst. All of a sudden, people thought they had stock worth this much money or real estate worth this much money. Now it's this much. Can they pay back their loans? No. And what happens to the banks? This is a picture of it from Leslie's Illustrated Journal, very popular magazine at the time.
They closed the doors.
All the banks, all of a sudden, they're not getting their money back. Uh-oh. And people are like, oh, wait a sec. Banks might be shutting the door. I better get my savings out. If one person does it, not a big deal. What if they have a run on the banks and they all go at once and those are holding pieces of paper? And what's happening in that picture? I bet anything, they're out the back door running away. So, if you think you have a piece of paper that says, the bank owes me this much money, what happens to that piece of paper if they shut the door of the bank, especially there?
It's worth
And that's where you see a lot of pictures of, like, paper blowing in the wind when they show a financial crisis. Because it's the idea of, this paper we thought was worth something isn't worth anything. Or sometimes just rolls of toilet paper. You see stuff like that. And so the bank shuts its door. People thought they had money. It's gone. And just imagine all of you, though. You put your savings in Bank B down the road. It didn't make risky investments. It's still safe. It's fine. But what are you thinking after you see the other bank down the street shut their door? What do you think? I better pull my money out of this bank. And so even safe banks can go under, and if there's a run on the banks. If everybody goes at the same time, they don't have the money either. No banks have the money. Today, they don't have the money. Huh? Yeah, but it's still a number on the computer. It goes through the Federal Reserve that says they have this much money. And, which is kind of weird. But even safe banks can go under. And that's what happened here. The whole banking system crashed. Literally, like that. And the banks that survived, they don't loan money anymore. It's called a credit freeze. And this shut down the entire economy. So you have a combination of prices are already dropping, and then the whole financial system crashes. Thus the panic. That happened in your lifetime. That happened in 2008. And this is from the New York Times. That would be financial disaster. But then we had one more thing. In 1873, to deal with the very weird monetary situation after the war, Congress passed the Coinage Act, with which the United States on the gold standard. Before, they had bimetallism, so silver and gold. And there's also these currency greenbacks they printed during the war. They said, okay, all these aren't worth anything. We're just going to base our money on gold. Not quite the official gold standard that's going to come out in the next century, but the gold standard. Well, there's a relatively finite amount of gold. What does that create once you go from, we're going to have all this currency to just this much currency? Literally, overnight. What happens to the value of money? It goes up. What happens to prices? They go down. Now you think as a consumer, that's good. But if you got debts to pay, and all of a sudden people aren't paying you as much, your debt hasn't gone down either. It's still an amount you have to pay back. This happened just as the panic was beginning. Made it significantly worse. In fact, farmers will call this the crime of 70s. They would eventually go to a little bit of bimetallism, but we're going to be on the gold standard up until 1933. A disaster, an absolute financial disaster. I like that picture of the panic. Lots of pictures of this. And 6 months. Look how many businesses shut their doors. And unemployment, it's really hard to figure exact unemployment. It was probably significantly higher. But still, what's going to happen to wages if all this happens? Yeah. Massive amounts of unemployment taps wages down. Even people who have jobs, their wages will drop. And what's going to happen to profits? Hey, people aren't going to be able to buy as much. So profits go down. Look at the bank failures. And this is what's amazing. I have to give you your test. So the beginning of the panic, look how many closed. And then 2 years later, it's actually the worst year of the financial panic. It wasn't 1873, it was 1876. That's the year that was so bad. The Great Depression, the panic began in 1929. The worst years were the winter of 32-33. That was the worst time. Because, and I'll show you how this happens, but the panics get worse and worse. And this was the realization that many people had. That these panics, they keep happening and happening and happening. And what kind of society are we going to have when they're done? By the way, this is the dog is the election map of 1896. I will show you the whole cartoon. It's a great political cartoon. It's kind of funny having the dog in the background. Oh, there's a dog. And this is going to lead to the Great Railroad Strike of 1877. Now, I know we've already talked about this once before, but I'm putting this down in the context of politics. So here we have the B&O Railroad. The Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, it actually still made money. It had a very profitable route. The B&O went up and down the coastline, so you can imagine this is a big deal. You know, it goes all the way from D.C. all the way up to Boston. And then there's a route to St. Louis and a route to Chicago. Pretty profitable. So even in the middle of the panic, they still made money. But what were they doing to their wages? Dropping them. If there's a lot of unemployment, it makes it really easy to drop wages. take a 25% pay cut, because there are 1,000 people out there willing to take your job for half of what you make. And people take it. Remember what I told you. Wages and profits do not link. Profits go up does not mean wages can go up. Wages are decided in the labor market. And if there's a large amount of unemployment, that drives wages down regardless of what profits are for an individual company. Regardless. And so, they cut wages. Well, finally in 1877 in Wheeling, West Virginia, which is right here on the southern route of the B&O, they had enough. It wasn't an organized strike. The workers just said, no, we're not going to work. We can't take it anymore. We can't afford it. They're an absolute terror. There's nothing more frightening than knowing you might not, there's a chance you might not be able to have a place for your family to live, or shelter, or food, or any of these other things. It's terrifying. And so they just had enough. And what happened is, you can imagine, it's a railroad. So the word spread up and down the track. So it went to Pittsburgh. And at Pittsburgh, this is Pittsburgh. Big, much bigger rail depot, because right before the pass. And they refused Cumberland Gap. The governor sent the militia out. The militia, what were the militia supposed to do? Yeah, make the workers go back to work. By the way, that's huge government aid for businesses. And what a thing. You have a business and you know that the government will force your workers to take whatever wage you pay them? Wow. That's no lose. Okay, so they sent the militia out, but the militia, what kind of people make up the militia? And they're, and what did they do? Just like, what's the rebellion in Massachusetts that led to the Constitution? Just like Shays' rebellion. And so, once that happened, the strike spread throughout the Northeast. The strike spread all along the railroad and quickly spread to New York Central, Pennsylvania, the Norfolk Railroad, all these other railroads. And then to other businesses. We had a nationwide strike overnight. It was shocking. They're going to call it the Great Upheaval. And this was, in many ways, almost like the Great Upheaval. We're talking like a civil war. And this is going to be the great fear for the next 60 years. That the workers on the bottom are finally going to say, we've had enough. President Hayes, in absolute panic, sends out federal troops. Now, this is from, I believe this is Harper's, this is Leslie's Illustrated. There actually was a cavalry charge into workers in Chicago. Yeah. President Hayes. You might remember Hayes. Rutherford B. Hayes was one that was, there was a contested election in 1876, and they did the Great Compromise, and he agreed to end what? Troops, fresh from Reconstruction, put down the strike. Now, this picture does not show it. They were black soldiers, almost all of them. Black soldiers, fresh from Reconstruction, were sent to Chicago or St. Louis or Pittsburgh to put down the strike. Remember, the militia joined at first. Do they join here? Race divided. They use racism to divide. It's a big deal. And one thing we should get from this, black soldiers would be used to put down white strikers for the next 15 years. Happened in Montana, happened in Butte. A big example is the 5th Infantry Regiment, which were black soldiers put down the strike in Coeur d'Alene. Remember the Civil War. The vast majority of Southern soldiers were never going to have slaves, yet they fought to keep that system. Why? Something better. I got at least something over them. And that kept things apart. This should remind you of Bacon's Rebellion. Don't forget this. A very similar thing will happen Little Rock Central High. The first school in this, that would be an attempt to integrate in the state of, in one of the states of the former Confederacy. Same kind of thing's going to happen here. The strike would be put down. Over 500 casualties to put down this strike, force them to go back to work. What a time. I mean, it showed that those who had the resources will do whatever it takes, but also showed that workers have a lot of power. This is a big deal. What's going to happen the next time we have a big panic? What happens if it's worse? And it would be. Everyone seems to get worse. Big event. Should add this. I know you heard this before about the National Guard. That's why there's a National Guard. You need professional soldiers. The state militia, well regulated, came out of the great upheaval in 1878. Congress passed a law to have a professional militia. That's where it came from. The Second Amendment, remember the whole thing about putting down slave rebellions, they had the thing about well-regulated militia, but that's why it's going to be organized much better. It comes out of this. For this purpose. A little bit of tidbit of history. We had a very violent labor history, but what direction does this country go? What happens if we get another panic? And here's a bigger reason. What cost us? How do you avoid this? So we have to get to the business cycle. And I will draw this up for you because I care about you as people. You're supposed to give me something. I mean, despite my faulty math. Are you sure? Shut off! I am.
You can just.
Problem solved. All right, so the business cycle. So write it up. Business. That's an E, obviously. It's also called the boom-bust cycle. And this is inherent in capitalism. And it's almost a mania that happens because it's a combination of, remember how size, increasing your production will give you a greater profit margin and trying to get greater efficiency, combined with speculation, the desire to get rich without work. It's supposed to actually say business.
No, but the why.
Why?
Why?
Yeah, why?
That's what he smells like.
Why?
What else would
Why
it
would
be?
you not like
No,
So
that's,
Exciting.
so here's the thing. This was not universally accepted. In 1873, when this happened, most people did not know about the economic theory. In fact, the first time it was really laid out was only 6 years earlier. And the economist who actually figured out how the business cycle works he wrote the business cycle as, see, this is why communism is, or I'm sorry, that capitalism is an absolute failure. It has to be replaced with communism. Karl Marx. Karl Marx was the economist. And he said, see, the business cycle will always, the business cycle will always favor a narrow few, and this is why capitalism is a failure, it's got to be replaced. But he figured it out. And so we're going to get now, when you get about economics and the role that government plays is to avoid the booms, avoid too much of a boom that might lead to too big of a bust, how to create a situation where you get more stable growth, or not. And those are going to be the different economic ideals that come out of this. So we're going to draw this. On top will be the boom. On bottom of the bust, make kind of a loop. It's a cycle, it's a circuit. So you need a little bit of room. And if we're in Australia, how would we do this?
The other way.
Yeah, the bust would be on top.
Wait.
This is Australia. If you flush a toilet, it goes kind of long. That's science. But what does a
Not wrong. You're not.
have you ever seen a map of Australia? The maps are all
Wait,
so,
what?
no more Australian jokes. But now a boom means the growing economy. The economy is growing in size. What does that mean? So let's wrap a few things. What that means. A few basic elements. What's happening to wages if we have a booming economy? Yeah, wages are going up. People have more money. Companies are in competition with each other to hire workers. That raises wages. Now, I don't think we're in a boom in quite the same as like a 1960s or 1990s boom, but that's happening a little bit right now. Wages are finally kind of going up for the first time in a really long time. because companies were competing with each other for wages. Target raised their wages 3 months ago. Walmart had to respond a month ago because there's competition for wages. Yes, that changes it. But it's the same thing. They're all in competition with each other, and they don't raise wages unless there's
Someone else.
Yeah, that's why I'm having trouble keeping workers. So, not only that, what's happening to unemployment? There are fewer people who want work looking for work. And it's encouraging people who might have not been before looking for work, hey, what the heck, let's go work. Also, so they go together. What's happening to prices of goods? Prices are going up. People have money, they're buying stuff. Stuff's going off the shelf so people can raise prices and they'll keep buying. Yes, you can eventually get to the point where they won't buy anymore. But in the boom, think about this idealized great economy. What's happened to profits? Not for everybody, but for the most part, profits are going up. And if that's going up, what's happening to stock values? I know this is pretty obvious, but I want to make this very clear what's going on. What are banks doing? Credit. Credit. Banks are loaning money like mad. We're all making money. They're in competition to loan money. They're encouraging people to borrow money. Remember, that's how banks make money. They charge interest. If prices are going up, let's take advantage. What's happened to debt? Skyrocketing. Woo, we're all getting rich. Let's borrow. And people don't borrow money today unless they think tomorrow they'll have what?
More money.
More money. Yeah. So the expectation is tomorrow I'm going to have money. So I'm going to borrow today. Idealized. I know some people borrow today. I'll roll the die. But idealized and optimism. What's optimism during a boom? Sky high. It's gonna go forever. We're all gonna get rich. This boom will never end. Tomorrow will be better than today. In fact, you're a fool not to invest today or buy that house today because tomorrow it's gonna be worth more. Oh, I know there have been crashes in the past, but not this time. We figured out a new key to success. It will never go down. Every single time there's a bubble, the prevailing attitude is what I just told you. Every single time. In the 1990s, it was, we have a new economy. People said this all the time in the late 90s. We have a new economy. With these new technological changes, there'll never be another recession. Heck, in 2005, 2006, the chairman of the Federal Reserve was telling people to buy more houses. Housing values will go down. Take a second mortgage. Oof. Every time. Heck, just a few years ago in Western North Dakota, people were acting like the boom there was going to go on and on and on and on. I knew people were saying, I'm not making this up. Let's go invest in real estate in Williston, North Dakota, because the prices are skyrocketing.
Yeah.
And then what happened 2 years ago? Crash. Now oil prices are going up a little bit, so there's going to be a little bit uptick. There'll be people, oh, we're going to get rich again. Every time this happens, every time, and every time it crashes. Except for this time. This time everything. It's actually mind-boggling. What brings it down? Yes.
So are the crashes worse and worse each time, or do they just kind of stay the same?
Worse. Well, I got to be clear about it. During the New Deal, they set up a series of regulations, especially banking regulations, that pretty much ended the threat of financial panic. And there was not a financial panic for 7 years. But they got rid of the regulations in the late 90s, early 2000s. Took them less than a decade to destroy the economy. That's pretty good. Not just the world's economy. That's impressive. And yes, there were people who said, no, you're going to do the same thing. Not this time. We learned.
So they should do
No,
nothing.
they never learn. But what happens? It's always overproduction or over speculation. People buy too much. The stock values go up. Or they produce more of whatever good that might be. Usually whatever new technological breakthrough. In the 1870s, 1890s, it was railroads. 1920s, it was cars and consumer electronics. The 90s, it was computers. And there's real estate. Always real estate, too. The 20s, real estate. Our last crash was almost solely real estate. The crash in 2000 was technology. But over speculation, another way to look at it is oversupply. They're producing more than what people can buy. And here's the big thing about this. What happens to prices? Eventually, what happens? If you produce more than what people want, or people are buying stocks, eventually there'll be a shock and prices will begin to drop. And when prices drop, that's a big deal for businesses. Think about if you own a business. It's a small business and you're investing more, you expanded, you borrowed money, because that's how people do it. And then the price is dropping, that next loan payment is like, ooh, that hit a little bit harder than I thought. That payroll is coming up, and that's a little bit more than I thought. And the next truck's coming in with whatever I'm selling. What are we selling? Stocks. Huh? Alligators. I like that. The next truck of alligators coming in. White socks. Well, what happens? How do you make up the difference? If you're an individual business trying to sell something, landlords, I like that. What do you got to do? If prices are dropping, how do you make your next loan payment? What do you got to do?
You gotta cut.
You got to sell more, produce more. And that's what happens every time. As an individual, think, well, I'm not making as much selling this, I'll sell more. But if everybody does it at the same time, what happens to prices? Have you ever seen a store, and this is always a sad moment for a store, when all of a sudden they have 35% off or something, sale. You ever seen those? Or a restaurant, all you can eat.
JCPenney, it's like Queen.
Yeah, they're not doing that because we're selling so much, we're running out of room. No, we're desperate. And that's the same thing. When they have a big sale like that, I mean, when it's a really big one, a lot of times I'm making up. That's a bad moment for them, especially if it's a small business, especially with someone you know. Like, oh no. Oh no. Yeah.
What about Black Friday when you have the super huge sales?
Well, that's just
Well,
like.
that's-
They spent all year, they didn't sell anything. And so they got to sell on that day. That's what they're doing. Those, when they sell that much, they're really, I got to sell a lot on that day. And you also notice, and then like after Christmas, they have the really big sales. I didn't sell this stuff. It's sitting here. I got to do something. Well, eventually, what happens? If prices keep dropping, profits drop. Eventually, you're going to get cutbacks. Eventually, companies are going to have to, not produce as much. Cut back on hours. What do you call it when you get rid of workers when you just don't have work for them? Layoffs. Start laying people off. Start buying less product to sell. And what does that lead to? Here's the biggie. Demand. What happens to demand for goods? This is where it begins to tank. So you got too much supply. Eventually leads to lower demand. Lower demand, more cutbacks. Cut back, gotta cut back, trying to catch up now. But what happens? If you cut back more, what happens to demand? If it's one person doing it, okay, or one store, but if everybody does it, and then you get to the next big one right here. That's where you get, if the banks fail, this is when they fail. This is when all of a sudden it's like, boom, the loan payments come, credit freeze. And it's called, they just banks, because think about banks that survive, they don't want to loan money. Banks shut their doors. All of a sudden, no one can get money. So actually, you could have a recession, which the recession happened in 2007. Recession, I'll explain that a little bit more tomorrow, but a recession means where the economy is shrinking. 2007, but the panic didn't happen until October 2008. The economy started shrinking in 1928, yet the Great Depression really began in 1929 with the panic. So it actually starts getting bad before you hit the wow moment. Because when you hit this, that's when prices just tumble. And there'll be a few things like for same kind of thing for stock prices. Prices will drop, and then people say, oh, they dropped. Let's buy more because the prices are lower. They call it the sucker's market. And that happened in 2008, happened in 1929, happened in 1873, happened in 1893. And that's where you get the bust. And let's look at this nice little column right here. I think we can guess what's going to happen. What's going to happen to wages? Down. Unemployment? Up. Prices?
Down.
Profits?
Down.
Wait. Optimism? It goes from we're all going to be rich to we're all... Oh, I didn't mention debt. What happens to debt? It goes up. What did I do?
Oh, nothing. I miscounted things.
Ah, are we now? Unusual math.
Sorry. Although I really I should have missed those.
Are you happy with that?
I'm happy with that score. It's fine.
Mr. Partridge, what are we gonna do Thursday and Friday?
Starting imperialism in the Spanish War.
Okay, sounds good.
Can I work for
We're to climb San Juan Hill, people. Social Darwinism, it's back. Where were you, Alex? Everyone just kind of stumbled around looking for us. Huh? Doing a passport? How do you renew a passport with the government being shut down?
Yeah.
Huh, Alex? Yeah, we're gonna come up with a better story next time. Actually, they come up with a compromise to keep it open for 3 weeks.
Geez.
But they promised they're gonna do something about DACA and the child health care.
Healthy children.
What's your way? Oh, it's like 38. Are you gonna be happy?
Not so bad.
Yes. Well, like, oh, mine is not.
What is your guys' like? Why is mine so good?
It was like 5 months. I
What did you? Oh wait, you don't wait to see this semester. Except for I had planned. I was like, I'm always getting there. I was like, I need not to.
like, if someone were Emma, are you joining this class? Squad?
You know what my mom
Where's it?
is here. I'm sitting here. Mom is here. So.
Oh, no.
And Emma's just there. Emma Yoda. Wait, Emma Yoda's sitting there.
Are you sit anywhere in this room?
I sat there.
It's hard to believe that all that was just.
Great.
It's startled me.
I used to that English class makes me. Okay, how is it that this is not, for instance, and every single one of us in the essay, she got the 7. And I was comparing our essays in my 6 and 7. There's like some schools I know even though Sarah like it's like the same, it's so weird how the same people in the same grade.
No, I literally tried.
No, that's not what makes me mad. It's making me mad is that it's not completely.
Oh, yeah.
Communism is the way to go, so I will not be able to tell you.
I was reading my essay and every single thing that was saying, oh, I did it right. And they're taking this over.
You still want to-
It's not getting me to say that, oh, you should show me. I was like, then why did I get that? That's an Jason. No. It was giant. No, we forward. I want to do it. Love the game. That's what I'm gonna do for my party. It's a gay party. Gay party. My third party.
Oh my god. I appreciate when I was like, oh, this is a cool night. I'm sitting here, I'm thinking like, oh my gosh.
Well, they're like, they are white supremacists. Although they don't put the title white supremacists. They are like the title of Nazi. And I'm like,
I would love to.
white.
Oh,